We obsess over Millennials and Gen Z. There's an entire generation that just exists in the shadows, barely mentioned. Generation X, born between 1965 and 1980. And their psychology might be the most misunderstood of any living generation. Here's what nobody tells you about Gen X. They were the first latchkey kids on a massive scale. Picture this, it's 1978, you're 8 years old, and you come home to an empty house. No smartphone, no Ring cameras, no way for anyone to check if you're okay. You let yourself in, make yourself a snack, do your homework alone, and wait. By 1984, 7 million children were regularly unsupervised after school. That empty house didn't just make them self-reliant, it rewired their entire psychology. Psychologists call what Gen X experienced a high-contingency environment. Actions had immediate, real consequences with no buffer time. When their parents finally showed up, the rules hit hard and fast. Nobody cared about how you felt or wanted to talk about it. Step out of line and you paid for it right then and there. Their brains learned to predict consequences in real time. Which is why Gen X thinks 3 steps ahead in ways that baffle younger generations. They're not overthinkers, they're survivors of a world that punished mistakes immediately. But here's the dark side nobody talks about. Gen X watched their parents promise stability, then divorce at record rates through the 70s and 80s. They saw people give everything to companies, only to get pink slips when layoffs hit. Everyone told them, work hard, follow the rules, and life will work out. Then the rules changed right in front of them. So psychologists might call it defensive pessimism, but Gen X just calls it being realistic. It's not cynicism, it's pattern recognition from repeated betrayal. And that's why you barely see them on social media. Gen X grew up when privacy was normal. When you messed up as a kid, maybe a handful of people knew and that was that. No phones, no viral videos, just some awkward memories and lessons learned. But here's what's fascinating, they learned early that being visible means being vulnerable. The less people know about you, the safer you are. It's not about not understanding technology, they literally built the internet. It's about understanding that exposure is risk. Gen X turned irony into emotional armor. Crack a joke, keep things at arm's length, laugh it off before it stings. They grew up doing duck and cover drills in school as if a desk would save them from nuclear war. When adults act like everything's about to explode but insist you shouldn't worry, you learn to hold 2 contradictory ideas at once. And you keep a little distance just in case the world ends on a Tuesday. This detachment isn't coldness, it's a survival mechanism from living under constant existential threat. Here's the paradox most people miss about Gen X. They're simultaneously the most independent generation and the most quietly collaborative. They'll never ask for help, been figuring things out alone since they were 8. But if you need help, they'll show up without drama or a social media post about it. They respect competence, not titles. If you've earned your position through actual skill, they'll follow you anywhere. If you're just someone with a fancy title who doesn't know what they're doing, they have zero patience. Because they watched incompetent authority figures make terrible decisions their entire childhood. From Watergate to the AIDS crisis to economic collapse after economic collapse. So here's what Gen X understands that the rest of us are still learning. Your value doesn't come from how visible you are, it comes from what you can actually do. Loyalty to your competence matters more than loyalty to any institution. And sometimes the smartest thing you can do is expect the worst while quietly preparing for it. They're not pessimists, they're realists who've been proven right too many times. Generation X might be the last generation that truly knows what it means to be alone with your thoughts. To be bored, to solve problems without Googling the answer. They're the bridge generation, and bridges don't get much attention. They're just there, doing the work, holding things together, expecting nothing in return. And maybe that's the most Gen X thing of all, not caring if anyone notices. Because they already know their worth doesn't depend on your validation.